Pleasure. You could stay on. I am Pious Kojo Backah. To our very first story. International ratings agency Fitch Ratings has upgraded Ghana's long-term local currency issuer default to CCC from RD. Now, the upgrade of the ratings of Ghana's local currency denominated debt follows the completion of the domestic debt exchange program by March 2023, February 2023, I beg your pardon. Now, reacting to the development, economist and also director at the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, Professor Peter Quartey, noted that Ghana's credit ratings agency ratings to CCC is an indication the economy is back on track, moving to stability, but says it is early days yet to celebrate.
It is good news, but it's early days yet. I don't think we should be celebrating at this point. There's still a long way to go. Certainly, we've been upgraded because now, with the payment on the local bonds that has occurred, it has, and also the debt exchange program has enhanced the government's ability to have some liquidity to settle some of the repayments. So we are going to basically enjoy some reliefs in terms of interest payments in 2023. Roughly about 10% of expected revenue will be saved. And also in 2024, we'll save some revenue. So it gives government some fiscal space. And that's a good signal for Fitch. And also with the two bonds that matured, that were settled on March 13th, all this gives indication that we are back on track and gradually moving towards some stability. So I think on the basis of that, we got the upward adjustment or upgrade.
Interesting. All right, so let's touch on revenue-related stories because Parliament is expected to vote tomorrow on 3 amended bills government has laid before it as part of measures to revamp domestic revenue mobilization and also help the country secure an IMF deal. When passed, the Income Tax Amendment Bill, the Excise Duty Amendment Bill, and Growth Sustainability Amendment Bill are expected to rake in about 4 billion cedis annually. Chief Executive of the Ghana Upstream Petroleum Chamber, David Ampofo, who is against the growth and sustainability levels, say introduction of these new taxes is a breach of the already stipulated petroleum agreement. He spoke earlier on the marketplace.
I think it is important to understand that the industry is going through some challenging times, and we must not underestimate what taxation and excessive or over-taxation can do. There are several levies that have been in the pipeline for some time. This 1% levy on gross production is essentially, it's like an increase in royalty. Okay, so it's not something that you find if you look at a petroleum agreement between a company and the government. There's no provision for that. It's extremely important that we go about these things with a recognition for the agreements we have. So, I mean, I don't even, really, it's not a question of wanting, not wanting to. It's just a question of whether it's even, you know, in the agreement that you have to ensure that you follow the rules. When you have an agreement with companies working in the country, exploring, drilling, looking for oil, risking money and so on, you come to an agreement with them, okay? And government does come to an agreement with them. We're just saying stick to those terms. You know, coming up every now and then with a tax is not the way you do business. I mean, let me ask you, let's assume that you had a landlord that you had an agreement with for a year, and you came to the agreement how much you pay and what they do. Would you be perfectly all right with it if the landlord came after 3 months and wanted to introduce another fee, and after another 2 months? Of course you wouldn't. I suspect you probably wouldn't even give up the place. That is the sort of thing we are talking about. Companies make investments based on some agreements and projections. When you begin to introduce charges here and now and then, and you treat them like they are nothing, but they are something. You say, oh, 1% on gross production is significant. And by the way, it's also 5% on profit before tax for service companies. These are the ones who will suffer, the Ghanaian service companies. And we speak about this, forgetting them. We as a chamber represent all of them, the international oil companies, the international service companies, and the local service companies. In fact, we have more Ghanaian companies in the chamber than foreign companies. And all these companies rely on work that's going on offshore. There's not much happening. We have not signed any new agreement for the last 6 years. What is there to tax, I ask you?
Meanwhile, tax consultant Francis Timoboy has advised government to engage stakeholders in the sector as the development could trigger litigation at the international courts.
If you look at every long-term agreement, and it happens in the mining sector, it happens in the petroleum sector, there's always a clause which we call the stability clause, and the purpose is to freeze every right and obligation that has been agreed to prevent possible abuse, either a change in state law or normally in a fiscal law like we have in the tax laws. But this growth and sustainability law has been with us since 2001. Unfortunately, when it was introduced, the mining and then the oil companies were not part. It was taken off in 2007, came back in 2009. It was taken off in 2011, came back 2013, and since 2013 it's been there on selected companies. This time we are seeing it coming back in 2023 in the budget. The government says they want to apply 1% on the products of the petroleum and then the mining sector. And that's what I think my brother David spoke about. It's a little problematic. What could have been done was that we may have engaged the companies that, look, this is where we find ourselves. We are in trouble, but then we want this levy stated with specified time when you want to withdraw it. I mean, there are companies, they may decide to accept it, though it is in the contract that you don't have a right, either as a country or as a operator, to change the terms and the conditions of the agreement. But it appears that we never did that engagement. And so for me, I've stated a position that it opens up for possible litigation. If they don't accept it, they may say that you are breaching the contract that they've signed with you. And I think that the earlier we engage them, the better. Maybe they may decide to forgo their rights and accept it and possibly come to rescue the situation in which we find ourselves. But to unilaterally impose it on them because we have the power to impose it, I think it's a sign for them to litigate.
More on taxes, and some importers of pharmaceutical equipment in the country are unhappy with what they describe as nuisance taxes on the operations. According to them, this may grind the operations to a halt if not addressed. Speaking at a press conference for the launch of the West Africa Pharma Healthcare, Chief Executive Officer of the Federation of Africa Medical Equipment, Disposables and Devices Manufacturers as well as Suppliers, Anthony Ameka, called on all relevant stakeholders within the sector for a consultative forum on the way forward.
At the press conference, the chief executive maintained that access to safe and effective healthcare technologies is an important condition for a well-functioning health service. He bemoaned the rate at which taxes are gradually eroding the gains made by players within the sector.
There are some factors that are also influencing the high cost of medical devices and equipment procurement and maintenance in Ghana. For instance, import duty of 20% CIF value, import VAT of 15% on one product, 15% of CIF value, processing fee of 1% of CIF value, ECOWAS levy of 0.5 of CIF value, National Health Insurance levy of 2.5 of CIF value plus duty, IRS tax deposit 1% of CIF value, special import levy 2% of CIF value, Ghana Exim Bank levy of 0.7% of CIF value, Get Fund import levy of 2.5% CIF value plus duty, inspection fee of 1%, AU levy 0.5%, COVID-19 recovery levy 1% CIF value. The other charges such as FDA inspection fee of 1.5%, port handling of 4%, clearing charges, and etc. are building the cost of our healthcare delivery and is becoming so much of a burden to the citizenry.
Deputy Director at the Ministry of Health, Jani said her outfit will work closely with the players for an amicable solution.
The Ministry of Health has put in place the implementation of the framework contract agreement in the health sector, which compels all health facilities to source from commodities from the central and regional medical stores. The framework includes well-defined and well-understood roles and responsibilities for both the ministry and suppliers, which is supported by clearly defined lines of communications and collaborative relationships, and set standards for goods procured under the framework contract.
The West Africa Pharma and Healthcare will bring together the manufacturers, wholesalers, dealers, and distributors of medical diagnostics, pharmaceutical industry, hospitals, and influential decision makers in West Africa.
Now, electrical cable manufacturers have expressed the need for the strict enforcement of standardized electric products manufactured in Ghana. According to one of Ghana's leading electrical cable manufacturers, Nexans Cable Metal Ghana Limited, if the issue of standardization is compromised, that will pose a serious risk to the country's energy transition. There is more in this report. Speaking at a familiarization tour of Nexans Cable Metal Ghana Limited in Tema as part of efforts of promoting and adopting made-in-Ghana products by members of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, Managing Director of Nexans Cable Metal Limited, Joans Lalim, emphasized the importance of an effective surveillance in enforcing standardization of electrical cables manufactured in Ghana.
Substandard cable is really a poison in our industry. No, with all these substandard cables that can be either with lower content of copper or bad design of the product, when we put this kind of cables, when we install them in the buildings, it's a sort of a bomb, because at any time these substandard cables risk to provoke fire, which puts in danger the safety of our families, our lives, and our goods. It's really important to have a robust, strong market surveillance system, and thanks to this market surveillance system, we will make sure that the products that are sold on the market are complied with the standard.
President of GUTA, Dr. Joseph Obeng, called on government to create the enabling environment by reducing the taxes imposed on indigenous companies to boost the local economy.
The nuisance taxes, as it was cleared, as was taken out from the table on 2017, are all creeping back in folds, and it's not helping businesses. And so if we want to go, the way to go is for government's own effort. The greater responsibility lies on government, our own effort, our own initiative, that this is the way to go. We want to enhance our local productivity. This is our resources, and that this is the policy that we've made, that will reduce the tax burden on this so that they can become relevant.
The visit enabled members of GUTA to tour the manufacturing plant of Nexans Cable Metal Company Limited. Now let's touch on some agri-related stories now. And Deputy Minister for Food and Agriculture, Yao Frimpong Ado, has indicated that the budgetary allocation for the sector is not enough. According to him, there is so much to do to achieve the targets in the sector. Speaking at a workshop to highlight the role of Ghana's agriculture sector, Mr. Ado made a call for more donor funding to the sector.
Over the last 5 years, Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, with funding from USAID, has increased its efforts towards contributing to an inclusive agriculture transformation in Ghana under the Partnership for Inclusive Agriculture Transformation in Africa. Speaking at a learning event organized to share insights from the implementation of the USAID Agra Piata program, Deputy Agric Minister Yao Frimpong Ado called for more donor funding to help the ministry execute its objectives.
There's so much that we need to do in the ministry that the budgetary allocations alone cannot, and I repeat, the budgetary allocations alone cannot let us achieve whatever objective we set for ourselves. That is why we continuously rely on donor partners. And donor partners here, as far as this program is concerned, I'll mention AGRA and USAID, because they are funding a lot of policy initiatives in agriculture. the agriculture that we all see, maybe it's at the tail end that we see it on the table that we see, but it starts from policy direction in seed production. For example, if in 2016, the seeds that we were giving to our farmers were just giving us 2 tons for a hectare in maize production. And with improved seeds supported by partnerships like what we are seeing today, they are now making 4 tons and 6 tons per hectare. Then we should know the importance of the involvement of the private sector, or let's say the donor partners.
Country Manager for Agra in Ghana, Juliet Lampo, highlighted some recommendations needed to improve the agri sector.
What we have noticed, in spite of the successes that we have achieved, there are still yield gaps, for instance. I mean, we might have increased yields, but we still have most crops doing less than 60% of achievable yields. So our recommendations include the fact that we need to work harder, we need to double down and making sure that farmers have access to improved quality seeds of diversified varieties close to them. They are using the right soil fertility management technologies, including the fertilizers, organic and inorganic fertilizers. We are making sure that the private sector is actively participating, and that has to do with the policy environment. And I'm glad that we are working closely with the Minister of Food and Agriculture to make sure that private sector participation is up. 6 sector companies are becoming more and more competitive and are out there in the market, such that ultimately the farmer is able to produce more and also produce profitably.
The USAID Agra Piata program focused on increasing farmers' access to quality seeds and fertilizer, improving the enabling environment for private sector participation in the input system, and strengthening smallholder farmer resilience.
And you're still watching Prime Business with me, Pious Kojo Backah. Now, Ghanaians may have alternative flour for baking if government pays attention to the new discovery of fonio as alternative flour. The University for Development Studies has been able to research into the use of fonio for baking of bread. This follows the escalated wheat flour prices in the wake of the Russian-Ukraine war. As part of work towards using fonio in the baking industry, students of the university were tasked to produce the 3 popular bread types in the country. Martina Bugri has more.
Fonio is touted for its nutritional value. It is also known for its glycemic index, meaning it doesn't quickly rise one's blood sugar levels. For this reason, it helps people with diabetes manage their blood sugar. Fonio is also gluten-free. It is for this reason it's seen as a more healthy alternative to wheat flour. Speaking at the Grand Challenge exhibition of fonio, 4 groups baked the popular sugar, tea and butter breads in Tamale. Team leader of the local implementation, Professor Francis Amaglo, said fonio can support Ghana's economy, its premium exports on the crop.
How did we arrive here is UDS has a focus on transforming the economy by looking at what we have as a nation. So fonio came into mind when we realized that during the Russian-Ukraine war, we were over-dependent on wheat. In fact, if you take a look at the import statistics for wheat, it has kept on rising to this level we cannot. And we spend so much money because of the bread that we eat. We need to exchange our cedis to dollars to be able to import wheat. All these and others contribute to the current situation we have ourselves in when the cedi cannot stand against the dollar. So what can we do? So we took it upon ourselves to see if we'll have an alternative to wheat. So looking at the crops we have in Ghana, and particularly in the north, and realizing that we are forgetting about one of the superfood crops we have, which is fonio, we decided to work with fonio.
He said elsewhere, people are eliminating wheat flour from their diet, adding that fonio, on the other hand, is a healthy one.
So the bread we have is gluten-free. It doesn't contain any wheat. So it's very healthier than the bread that is currently on the market. We refer to fonio as a super food because it contains a high level of, let me say, compound that have antioxidant properties. Okay. So literally we go up, we walk in the sun, we overwork, the body goes into stress. So you need natural antioxidants to help bring the system back. And fonio is one of the crops that contain huge bioactive compounds that help reduce the stress in us.
Lecturer in Sustainable Agri-Food Systems at the University of Lincoln, Dr. Lillian Corey, called on government to support develop the fonio crop.
So there is that thinking about the value chain from production to making the bread. Right? So we've started at the end, which is making the product itself, but we need to also look at the production side of things. So yes, we are evaluating the whole supply chain, and we're also looking at stakeholders. We are recently doing a stakeholder analysis to understand who we need to work with and how easy that will be. I'm not a local, but I'm working with the locals, so that makes it easier to understand how the system works and how I could penetrate, or we could work together in this. So yeah, that's the approach that we are having.
Team leader of the Royals, who won the ultimate prize, Beatrice Nobolga, said it was challenging, but they are happy about the results.
We wanted to use a different approach. We wanted to use a natural fermentation instead of the yeast, instead of the commercial yeast to make the bread. So when we first started, our bread, it wasn't looking like bread, and we nearly gave up because all the other groups were, having a better product, whilst we are stuck with at one point. But we didn't give up. We continued to do a little more research and then find out the reason what is causing our bread not to look like a bread.
And that's it for the bulletin for tonight. I am Pious Kojo Backah. Always a pleasure serving you. For more news, you can get business stories when you log on to myjoyonline.com/business. We leave you with
the business segment was brought to you by
EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
Check your QR code.